You know, sometimes life has a way of knocking you down in places you least expect, and the people you thought would stand by you turn out to be the ones who push you away the hardest. I never thought I'd sit down and share this part of my life with anyone, but maybe by telling it, I'll finally feel lighter, like the weight pressing on my chest for months might finally ease. So here's the truth. My own sister didn't invite me to her wedding, not because she forgot, not because there was some logistical issue, but because I'm in a wheelchair. Let that sink in for a moment. I didn't believe it myself when I first heard. I replayed those words in my head, over and over again. We just don't think it'll look right if you come. You'll draw too much attention, and the day is about me, not you. Those were her exact words. Each syllable cut into me like a shard of glass. I tried to tell myself she didn't mean it, that maybe she was stressed about her big day, but no, she doubled down. She said having me there would make people whisper, that her photos would look different, and she didn't want pity glances in the middle of her fairy tale. Can you imagine hearing that from someone who grew up with you, laughed with you, fought with you, and shared the same childhood roof? I sat in silence when she told me, because I couldn't even find the strength to argue. My throat locked up, my stomach twisted, and all I could do was stare at her in disbelief. A part of me kept waiting for her to smile awkwardly, to tell me it was a cruel joke, but she didn't. She just looked at me like I was an inconvenience, like my existence somehow threatened the perfection of her carefully crafted moment. And then, as if the knife in my chest wasn't deep enough, my mom pulled me aside later and told me I still had to help pay for the wedding. She said, "You're her sibling, you have to support her, whether you're there or not." I remember laughing bitterly in that moment, because what kind of twisted world do we live in where I'm good enough to hand over my savings, but not good enough to sit in the audience and clap for her vows? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if maybe I was the one being selfish for expecting more, or if this was truly as cruel as it felt. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about a wedding. This was about the way my family has always chosen to see me not as a full person, but as a problem to manage. And that realization hurt more than any physical pain I've ever endured. The days that followed were like walking through a fog, except I wasn't walking at all. I was just stuck in this chair, staring at the walls that seemed to be closing in on me with every passing second. I kept replaying every family memory in my head, trying to figure out where it all went wrong, because my sister and I used to be so close. When we were kids, she would sneak into my room at night because she was scared of thunderstorms, and I'd tell her silly stories until she fell asleep. I was the one who covered for her when she stayed out late as a teenager, the one who kept her secrets even when they put me in trouble with our parents. I thought those bonds meant something. I thought they were unbreakable, but apparently, they weren't strong enough to withstand the image she wanted for her wedding day. What hurt even more was how my mom stood on her side. She didn't yell at me. She didn't accuse me. She didn't even sound angry, or she just spoke in that matter-of-fact tone that made me feel smaller than ever. Like her decision was final, and there was nothing to discuss. She told me, "Your sister deserves her happiness. Don't ruin it with your feelings." I wanted to scream, to tell her that my feelings mattered too, that being excluded from such a huge milestone was like being erased from my own family's story, but instead, I stayed quiet, because deep down, I already knew they wouldn't understand. They never truly did. Every holiday, every family trip, every event, there was always this undercurrent of me being different, of me being fragile, of me being the one they had to accommodate. Sometimes it was subtle, sometimes it was blunt, but it was always there, shaping the way they saw me. And now it had finally boiled over into something I couldn't ignore: a wedding without me. My friends tried to console me, saying, "It's just one day, you don't need them, you're better off without toxic people." And maybe they were right, but they didn't understand that this wasn't just one day. This was my sister choosing to erase me from one of the most important chapters of her life, and my mom backing her up like it was the most natural thing in the world. The thought of handing over money for the same event I wasn't allowed to attend made my chest burn with rage, but more than anger, it was sadness that consumed me. It was the kind of sadness that makes your hands tremble and your eyes blur. The kind that no amount of comfort food or binge-watching TV can fix. I felt like a ghost in my own family, and the scariest part was, maybe that's how they always wanted me to be: invisible, silent, out of sight, out of mind. The closer the wedding date came, the heavier everything felt. like some invisible weight pressing down on my chest every time I glanced at a calendar or scrolled through social media and saw her posting pictures of her bridal showers and fittings. People commented under her photos, calling her the luckiest bride, telling her how stunning she looked, and all I could think was, if only they knew the cost of that picture-perfect smile. No one saw the part of the story where her own brother, the one who shared her childhood, was deliberately left out like a stain she wanted to cover. I remember sitting at the edge of my bed one night, my phone buzzing with notifications as she uploaded yet another countdown post, and I stared at it until my vision blurred. My heart felt like it was caught between wanting to smash the phone against the wall and wanting to call her, beg her one last time, plead for her to see me not as a burden but as family, but my pride, as bruised as it was, wouldn't let me. And then came the conversations with my mama. Those conversations were like twisting a knife in a wound. She would walk into my room, her voice calm, almost rehearsed, reminding me that family means sacrifice, that a good sibling supports without complaining. She acted like my entire existence was reduced to being a wallet that could pay for flowers and catering, while my presence, my laughter, my tears, didn't qualify as valuable enough to sit in a chair at the venue. I wanted to tell her that money wasn't the sacrifice she thought it was. The real sacrifice was me swallowing my pain every single day, pretending to be okay so that they didn't feel guilty, hiding the ache that never seemed to stop. I kept thinking back to the accident, the day I lost my ability to walk, and how in those first few months, everyone swore they'd be there for me no matter what. They promised me I'd never feel less, that family would be my anchor. And now, here we were, years later, and those promises were dissolving like sugar in water, leaving behind nothing but a bitter aftertaste. I wasn't asking for special treatment. I wasn't asking to be the center of attention. I was asking to be seen, to be valued, to be loved in the same way I loved them. But the silence between my sister and me stretched on, and with every passing day, I realized she had already made her choice, and maybe my mom had too. The night before the wedding was when everything finally hit me like a tidal wave. I remember, lying in bed, the house eerily quiet, the kind of silence that amplifies every creak in the walls and every hum of the refrigerator, and my thoughts were screaming louder than any sound could. I tried to distract myself, flipping through old photos on my phone, scrolling back years to when my sister and I used to take silly selfies together. There was one picture where she had smeared cake across my face on my birthday, laughing so hard she nearly fell over, and I looked at it for so long that the edges of the screen started to blur from my tears. How did we get from that moment, her laughing beside me like I was her favorite person in the world, to this reality where I wasn't even considered worthy of being in the same room on the biggest day of her life? It felt surreal, like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. At one point, I caught myself whispering out loud, "What did I do wrong?" as if saying the words might summon an answer. But there was nothing, just the emptiness of my room and the ache in my chest. I wanted so badly to call her, to tell her that all I wanted was to be there, to promise I wouldn't steal her spotlight, to swear I'd just sit quietly in a corner and clap when everyone else did. But my pride was shattered into so many pieces that I couldn't pick them up even if I tried. And besides, I knew the answer already. She didn't want me there, and begging wouldn't change her mind. Then there was my mom, who still hadn't given up reminding me of my duty. That very evening, she came into my room with an envelope, laid it on my desk, and said, "This is the amount you can contribute. I know you have it saved." No words of comfort, no hug, no reassurance that I mattered, just a cold request, or maybe even a demand, as if the money mattered more than my presence ever could. I stared at that envelope after she left, my hands trembling with a mix of rage and heartbreak. In that moment, I realized something that both terrified and liberated me. My family didn't see me the way I saw them. To me, they were everything, the people I would crawl across broken glass for if they asked. But to them, I was a convenient resource, a relative to display when it made them look good, and to hide away when it didn't. That realization broke something inside me, something that maybe can't be fixed. I spent the rest of that night wide awake, not from excitement like most siblings would on the eve of their sister's wedding, but from a storm of betrayal, grief, and the bitter clarity of finally seeing the truth about the people I loved most. The day of the wedding arrived, and while the rest of my family buzzed around in excitement, I sat alone in my room, staring at the morning sunlight as it poured through the blinds in long, golden strips. It was supposed to be a day filled with joy, with family, with unity, but for me, it felt like a day of mourning, like I was grieving a sister who was still very much alive but had chosen to cut me out of her world. My phone vibrated relentlessly with notifications, pictures of my sister in her gown, videos of guests arriving, comments from people gushing about how perfect everything looked. Each ping was like a hammer against my chest, reminding me over and over again that I wasn't there, that I wasn't even considered worthy of being part of those memories. I remember turning the phone face down on the desk just so I wouldn't have to see the endless flood of posts. Still, curiosity gnawed at me, so I picked it up again and opened one of the videos. There she was, my sister, walking down the aisle, with a smile so wide it could have lit up the darkest night. The crowd rose to their feet, the music swelled, and for a brief moment, I almost forgot that Panay just saw my sister, radiant and happy. But then, like a punch to the gut, it hit me. She had that happiness at the cost of erasing me. And what's worse, nobody in that crowd seemed to care. They clapped, they cheered, they took photos, and not a single person wondered where her brother was. My mom, of course, was there in the front row, her face glowing with pride, and I couldn't help but think about how she had spent more energy making sure I contributed financially than making sure I was emotionally included. That realization sat in my stomach like a stone, heavy and immovable. I wheeled myself over to the window and watched the world outside, people going about their day, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside me. It was then that I realized something I hadn't dared to admit before. Maybe my family didn't just overlook me. Maybe they genuinely believed their lives were easier without me in it. That thought nearly crushed me, but at the same time, it sparked something I hadn't felt in years, a tiny flame of defiance. If they wanted me invisible, I could give them silence, but I could also give myself something else. The freedom to stop begging for scraps of love that should have been given freely. As painful as it was, I began to understand that my worth wasn't tied to a wedding invitation or to whether my sister thought I fit into her fairy tale. My worth was something I had to claim for myself, even if it meant standing alone. And in that lonely, bitter, tear-filled morning, I started to imagine a life where I stopped waiting for my family to see me, and instead learned to see myself. That evening, when the wedding was finally over and the last photo had been posted, I sat in the quiet of my room and felt the weight of everything I had lost, not just the chance to watch my sister say, "Do," but the illusion that my family truly saw me as an equal. The silence after all the noise of the day was deafening, like the whole world had moved on while I was frozen in place. My mom came back later that night, still dressed in her gown from the wedding, her makeup slightly smudged from tears of joy, and she looked at me with this strange mix of pity and irritation. She didn't ask me how I was, didn't offer me a hug, didn't even say she missed me at the ceremony. Instead, she asked if I had transferred the money she requested earlier. That moment was when something inside me finally broke, not the kind of break that leaves you shattered and weak, but the kind that hardens you, that forces you to realize you can't keep living for people who don't see your value. I told her no. For the first time, I looked her straight in the eye and said, "If my presence wasn't good enough for the wedding, then neither is my money." The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating, but I didn't look away. She frowned, muttered something about me being selfish, and left the room without another word. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt a strange kind of peace settle over me. Yes, I was hurting. Yes, I was angry. But beneath all of that, I finally understood something. Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most will be the very ones who cut you the deepest. And you can either let that destroy you, or let it push you to build a new kind of family, one that actually chooses you. That night, I decided I was done begging to belong. I picked up my phone, opened the contact list, and instead of scrolling to my sister's name like I had so many times before, I reached out to friends, the ones who had shown up for me when it mattered, the ones who didn't see a wheelchair before they saw a person. We ordered food, they came over, and for a few hours, the pain faded into laughter and warmth. And in that moment, I realized maybe I hadn't lost everything after all. Maybe I had just lost the illusion of love that was never really there to begin with. As the night stretched on, I whispered to myself, not as a question but as a promise, I will no longer be invisible. I will no longer be ashamed. I will no longer let anyone make me feel less because if my sister's wedding taught me anything, It's that sometimes being excluded is the very push you need to finally set yourself free.